Curti Trades here, and if you're looking for an all-wheel drive vehicle and not considering Subaru, here's why you should. So I'm going to go over some of the things that you might be looking for in an all-wheel drive vehicle and some of the things you should avoid when you're looking for an all-wheel drive vehicle, because there's a lot of different models and makes, and not all all-wheel drive systems are created equal. So there's a lot of things to consider when you're looking for an all-wheel drive vehicle, and Subaru's all-wheel drive system, the symmetrical all-wheel drive, is a very good one, and it's a very good one for many reasons. And every time I was looking for an all-wheel drive vehicle before I purchased this car, I found something that I didn't like about all of the other brands, and it kept pushing me right back to Subaru. So I was really looking for an economy car. I was driving quite a bit in the winter, and we get lots of snow up here. We get around 100 to 150 inches of snow in the winter, and I was driving about 50, 60 miles to work. So I wanted something that was really fuel efficient and had all-wheel drive. And when you're looking for vehicles that are both all-wheel drive and efficient, it kind of narrows down your search quite a bit. And then from there, the other big thing I was looking for is a pretty low price point. So my purchase boiled down to three categories: cost to purchase, fuel economy, and having all-wheel drive. And when you look at those three attributes alone, there is no one better than Subaru. There just isn't. If you do already own a Subaru, let me know why you own your Subaru. Why do you pick a Subaru over something else in the comments? If you're looking to buy a new car, let me know why you're thinking about buying a Subaru. Now, the other aspect of this is the performance of the all-wheel drive, because all-wheel drive systems are not created equal. There are two main types of all-wheel drive. There's a true all-wheel drive system, which has all four wheels getting power all the time. Many of these all-wheel drive systems will vary the amount of power that is going to the front and the rear wheels. For example, these cars are set up for economy, so they have 60 to the front and 40 to the rear. A lot of them are 50-50 splits, like Audis and BMW, for example, are typically a 50-50 split. So sometimes the ratios can change, and some of the cars can actually change the ratios of where the power output is going to. And then there's another system that some lower end Jeeps have this system as a 4x4 option or all-wheel drive option for the Jeeps, and a lot of other cars where they just try and slap on an all-wheel drive system to a vehicle that's not typically ordered in all-wheel drive, is where it has almost all the power going to the front wheels, or all of the power going to the front wheels, until it starts to detect the wheels slipping, and then it starts to transfer power to the rear wheels. And the really big problem with those systems is they're not very good at getting the traction where it needs to be quickly. And if you have a car that has an all-wheel drive system where all the wheels are always going and always powered, the power is already at those wheels. So when certain wheels start to slip, the other ones are already making up for it by going. And if you have a system that is reactive, where it waits until it detects a problem and then starts pushing the power back, that is not as good at keeping the traction where it needs to be. And so those systems are inferior. And you'll see a lot of people buy any old all-wheel drive car, and they won't realize that they have an inferior system until they need to use it. I wouldn't say it's a terrible system, it's just not as good as it could be. So an all-wheel drive system that has power at the wheels all the time is much better. So the other thing that Subaru's all-wheel drive system is very good at is being extremely stable. And you won't see this with every all-wheel drive system either. And what makes it so stable is it has equal length half shafts, so it doesn't get torque steer. So each wheel is continually pulling at the same rate, and it allows the car to stay on a much more stable path. A lot of the components for Subaru's all-wheel drive system are relatively low on the vehicle, so they help keep a lower center of gravity. And if you've ever driven an SUV or a truck, for example, in the winter, if you start to lose control and slide, you'll feel the car wobble a lot. That's called body roll. And with the Subarus, especially ones that are lower, like these ones here, like the Impreza, it really minimizes a lot of that body roll, and so it makes the car a lot more stable when you're cornering, and if you do end up losing control, it helps with stability of the vehicle. The other thing is cost. Subarus are very low maintenance cars. They're very easy to take care of. This car is one of the simplest cars I've ever owned. The oil filter is on the top of the motor. A lot of the components are really easy to get to. It's not a really complex machine. They've kind of had this recipe of their vehicles on how to make them and how to make them easy to work on, and they keep kind of staying with that recipe. You see, this is a 2012. On the newer models, they're set up almost an identical pattern to this under the hood and the suspension components, for example, because it works. and it's easy to work on. So it's a very simple car, parts are cheap. You can do almost everything you need to do on these vehicles. I will say that the transmissions and some of the other components like the electronics do get a little bit complex, but compared to most brands, they're pretty good overall. And the other really big thing I noticed is I was looking at, for example, some Dodge vehicles, like a Caliber, for example. This was about 5-6 years ago, or like a 300, for example. And to get them in all-wheel drive, you either have to add an all-wheel drive option if you're buying new, obviously, which can be a couple $1,000s, or you have to bump up to a larger segment or trim model to get all-wheel drive. They bundle it in with a bunch of other junk that you might not necessarily want, and it might cost you $5,000 or $10,000 more to buy a vehicle with all-wheel drive. Subaru, you get all-wheel drive. It's not an option. You just get it, and it doesn't inflate the cost by $10,000 if you want to add all-wheel drive. So it was really difficult to find a comparable car with all-wheel drive for the same price. And if I could find a comparable car with all-wheel drive, it was either way more expensive or had really bad fuel economy. If you looked at the lower segments like a Ford Focus or something like that with all-wheel drive, they typically didn't get as good of gas mileage, or they were slightly more expensive than a Subaru. Or on the top of the spectrum, if you went for like a BMW or an Audi, they were a lot more expensive. Had similar fuel economy numbers or better, but again, the purchase price was much higher. Subaru is also really well known for their brand loyalty and for being a good brand to work with. I know a lot of brands are pretty bad with customer service. I have also had a few experiences with Subaru of America and, for example, recalls and those sorts of things. And they've always been very helpful and very willing to work with you and help, whether it's add discounts to help make your repairs cheaper, or do other things to help keep a happy customer. They want their customers to be happy, and so they will do what they need to help you do that.